And we're live.
What's up?
I'm Josh Loney.
I am Will Hammond.
And Will just, let's start right out by saying, Will just reminded me we don't actually have a name for this podcast yet.
We are nameless.
That seems to be our MO for podcasting, is just like not realizing that part is mildly important.
Nah, you don't need to differentiate us from anyone else.
For now, let's call it Bent Cinema.
Bent Cinema, okay.
There we go.
Right.
Boom, we did it.
The Bent Cinema Podcast.
Yeah, because this is us talking about movies.
Yes.
Today, we're talking about the new film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring Nicolas Cage as Nick Cage, and also starring Nicolas Cage as Nicky Cage.
It's a dream come true.
Yeah, if you wanted to see Nick Cage talk to himself while playing himself, this is the film for you.
It is.
And who directed this film? I gotta look it up. It's someone who I think it's their directorial debut.
Yeah, so it's Tom Gormican.
Yeah, he's someone who I'm completely unfamiliar with.
Same.
And
it was also written by Tom Gormican and Kevin Eaton as well, apparently. So.
Yeah, and Kevin Etten.
Evan, yeah, excuse me.
Who I know from, actually, he wrote on the TV show Reaper, of all things. And what's funny about that is when you deal with good writers, you can always kind of pick up on things. Like, you'd be like, who wrote this? Is this the same person who wrote it? Yeah.
Right.
And I was watching the show Ash vs. Evil Dead, for instance, once.
Yeah, hell yeah.
And I was like, dude, who the hell is writing this episode? Because it sounds like a Reaper episode. And it turns out that they had hired half the writing cast of the writing team from Reaper. And so this film, knowing that, does have a little bit of that Reaper, Scrubs. He also wrote on Scrubs sense of humor. Gormican, once again, I have to look him up.
I was gonna say I'm not familiar with him.
He doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, so that's where he's at.
He's apparently, let's see, he wrote on a few things. Ghosted, That Awkward Moment. Honestly, that's all he's got. He also directed That Awkward Moment from 2014. So not a lot in his repertoire on that end.
But for this to be his first really major film, I find to be pretty impressive. He must be a friend of Nick Cage's.
Has to be.
Right, Nick, you asked, and we'll get to it, but you asked if the plot of the film is literally how the film was written, and it seems possible, although I think this film is a little bit more thought out than they would like you to think.
Yeah. Once you see it, that completely makes sense. Once you delve into the story, it's oh, okay.
So for those who haven't seen it yet, here's the blurb on IMDb is, in this action-packed comedy, Nicolas Cage plays Nick Cage, channeling his iconic characters as he's caught between a superfan and a CIA agent. And the superfan, played by Pedro Pascal,
yes,
is suspected to be, or known to be, a weapons dealer. Mm-hmm. He's just a crime lord who has paid Nick Cage $1 million to come visit his island where Catalina or some shit.
Yeah.
And Nick Cage shows up. The CIA is trying to do a sting, and they get him involved because, of course, right? And I'm not actually familiar with Tiffany Haddish. She played the CIA agent, but I thought she did a good job.
Yeah, she's been blowing up in recent years.
Yeah, she's apparently huge, but I'm out of the loop.
I thought she did a great job. I thought Pedro Pascal did an incredible job. I mean, Nick Cage, obviously.
I feel like this was almost more of a vehicle for Pascal than for Cage.
I was going to say, man, he was really impressive in this movie.
Yeah.
It was a fun role. It's cool. It's I think all of them, they took it seriously while also understanding that it is a not serious movie,
Right.
But it was done very well all the way around. And then I'm sure we'll get to it, but specifically the acid sequence with Pedro Pascal and Nicolas Cage, that was pretty well crafted in my opinion. It was cool.
Yeah, well, and Pascal, if you once you watch enough movies and you follow the industry for long enough, full disclosure, I've worked in Hollywood.
Yes.
I've seen how a movie gets made.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
You are very well versed in that.
Yeah,
in that universe,
and knowing how actors develop their projects, right? It seems to me almost like, I don't know if Pedro Pascal is actually a Nicolas Cage superfan, but if you are his agent, at the very least, you're looking at someone who has just played two of the most popular characters in recent television history, right? Mm-hmm. He was what's his face from Game of Thrones, right? It's been so long.
Oh yeah.
And then he's also the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And he's a good actor too. He was in the Kingsman 2.
Yep.
You know, which I thought was kind of. I remember at the time being like, why is this guy in Kingsman 2 playing a redneck? That was, I thought, an odd choice. But seeing this film, I'm like, oh, okay. So what he wants to do is carve out a space for himself, career-wise, that I think is similar to the space that Nick Cage has carved out, where you can do whatever you want while also being extraordinarily while still making the fact that you're weird and gonzo part of the appeal. Like, Nick Cage can get people to watch a movie they would literally never watch otherwise, just because he's Nick Cage. But it took him being Nick Cage enough times for that to happen. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think this kind of is intended to kind of expedite the process of, okay, Pedro Pascal, you can expect to see him in anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I do wonder, I'm curious, I haven't asked around, but I'm curious how the film got developed, because it wouldn't surprise me if it was ironically almost more of a vehicle for him. Either that or Nick Cage must have chosen him, but that to me seems less likely.
Yeah, I'm really curious about what the backstory is to this movie and how they made it, where the idea came from, because, I definitely feel like there could be a couple different angles as to what that story is. It's a really fun movie.
Well, yeah, it is a fun movie. What would you say was your initial impression, and how did it sit with you? We went and saw it in theaters because of just the ravages of COVID. I got COVID like right after we saw this movie. We weren't able to do the podcast while it was fresh in our minds. But sometimes I think it's good to sit with the film. Yeah. So what was your initial impression, and then how did that progress for you?
Okay, so I went into this movie having no expectations whatsoever, right? I go into this movie thinking, okay, I'm paying to see Nick Cage be Nick Cage, and I'm sure he's going to ham it up and do his thing, right? Like, I'm down. You know what I mean? Take my money. Let me have a good time for the next couple hours. We also got quite stoned before we saw it.
As you should.
Yes, yeah. So
with a movie like this,
initial impression was I walked out of that and I was very pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it.
What were your expectations? Like, how did it exceed them?
Honestly, like I said, I don't think I had any expectations going into it. I kind of thought like, this, I'm expecting this to be a fun movie, but I don't know if it's going to actually be like a well-crafted movie, and maybe it's one of those things where it's like, all right, you take one step forward, but then 2 steps back, and you sort of do that throughout the whole thing. But no, I thought it was really well-crafted, man. I thought the performances were great. Like I said, the idea that it didn't take itself too seriously, it leaned in on that fact, and I think on the personality of Nick Cage. But it was really, really good.
There was a great examination of his personality, or his persona, more accurately.
Yes, yeah.
Early when he's talking to the younger version of himself, and the younger version of himself tells him, "You're not an actor, you're a movie star."
Yeah, dude, and the recurring element of him talking to his younger self, and him constantly sort of hammering home that point. You're Nicolas fucking Cage. You're a fucking movie star.
Right.
And present day Nick Cage is just really trying to get a grip.
Right.
Of the current situation, keep his head above water.
And in real life, the guy is bankrupt, or he famously was bankrupt about 5 years ago, which led to him making some very odd choices. Just to pay, just I gotta pay off 7 houses.
Which now just adds to the legacy.
Yeah,
at honestly, this point, you know what I mean?
Of course, Nick Cage, of all people, would lose 7 houses because he just kept buying too many paintings. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I've never met the guy, know nothing about him. I do know he's a Coppola But like, I think that's the other thing, by the way, that I liked about the film, emphasizing his persona, is early on, I think Nick Cage had this stigma of being a Coppola. I think everyone knew it. You know, his first movies are like, I think he might have a cameo in. No, he's not in The Outsiders. In fact, actually, I'm pretty sure that Francis Ford Coppola snubbed him from being in The Outsiders, and then said, "But here, I'll give you a supporting role in Rumblefish." Right?
Okay, yeah.
But then later he's in Peggy Sue Gets Married, another great movie, but also a Coppola movie. And so then it's like, oh, so you're just, you know, child of nepotism. You'll notice Sofia Coppola just could never and probably should never act again after Godfather 3.
Right.
So like, if you're Nick Cage, you have to prove that you are your own figure, that you...
Yeah, you
have to
stand
prove
on
that
your
you've
own.
earned it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the career path of doing stuff like from Moonstruck to fucking Raising Arizona,
Yep,
to Wild at Heart,
Leaving Las Vegas.
what is that vampire movie where he's shouting like, "I'm a vampire, I'm a vampire"?
Oh fuck!
Remember that? Shadow of the Man, it's something like that.
Yes, I know what you're talking. I'm blanking on the name.
Just like such weird.
Then you got Face Off.
Yeah, and even
which is
when
referenced in the movie.
and they reference everything. Yeah,
Pedro Pascal. It's his favorite movie in the movie, right? His
Yeah.
character Javi. It's Face Off.
Yeah,
I
Face
think
Off
so.
and Paddington 2.
Yeah,
Which
that's
I
what
almost
it is.
watched because of this movie. When I had COVID, I almost watched Paddington 2, and I was like, well...
We need to have a Paddington 2 session after watching that movie, which I'm pretty sure we were both like immediately upon walking out being like, hey, have you ever seen this? No. I feel like we should probably watch it.
Yeah, like, I do wonder if the guys who wrote that movie, whether they... And I like that they know they're making you ask this question. It's like, is Paddington 2 actually good, or are they just really trolling you to see how many people they can get to watch this movie and be like, no, this is fucking terrible. Like, this is the worst movie I've ever seen. But so then when you sat with it over time, did you like it more?
I did, man. I mean, like, it continued to grow on me, and I've, like, thought about it a fair amount. But... from a lot of different aspects, man, I thought it was a really good movie. I thought the shots were great. I thought the cinematography, the lighting was very impressive. All the performances were awesome. Nicolas Cage, like, when he's talking to Nicky Cage, his younger self, the first time I saw that character, almost immediately after that scene was over, was, oh, fuck. I want to go watch Wild at Heart now. Like, I have.
I did want to watch Wild at Heart after, because young Nick Cage is
dude. It's so. I mean, it's like. Okay, granted, it's not solely his character from Wild at Heart, but god damn, is that character just so over the top? And even he's got that like rock star mannerism still at that. Like,
because he's supposed to be like Elvis in Wild at Heart, which is, in my opinion, almost David Lynch mocking. And Nick Cage himself. I think Nick Cage is a very self-aware person. I think in Wild at Heart, they're both mocking the idea that he is this hot movie star.
100%. I would agree. I would definitely agree with that.
So they're like, oh, he's Elvis. They're at this fucking, like,
thrash
mosh
metals.
pit thrash show, and he just breaks into treat me like a fool. And he does just a terrible Elvis impression with a bad haircut.
Yep.
And a snakeskin jacket.
And I was going to say,
Here's a snakeskin jacket. It's a symbol of my dedication to personal freedom and individuality, or whatever the fuck it is.
It's and then what is it? Bobby Peru is Willem Dafoe in that movie as a creeper. So anyway,
that's what this movie was missing, was a Willem Dafoe cameo. I think the one thing it was missing is there were no really bonkers cameos.
Yes.
And I think, like, speaking of Lynch, like, Lynch is the master of the bonkers
Absolutely.
cameo. Like,
absolutely.
Until he was dead, he would bring Eraserhead back into every movie at some weird point. In Wild at Heart, he's like, my dog barks some. And, like, he'll just, okay, Isabella Rossellini shows up, or then in, like, Mulholland Drive, Gene the pool cleaner is Billy Ray Cyrus.
Yep.
Even honestly, the casting of Robert Blake in Lost Highway is weird, but then Marilyn Manson makes a fucking cameo. Like, he always throws in some cameos that kind of add to the surrealism.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did think that movie kind of, I feel like if they could have found a way to get, like, Jack Nicholson or just like
dude.
even Don Cheadle or just someone who has a name and a persona who can just like show up as like the fucking mailman.
That's actually a good call. Like if you could figure out a way to squeeze Jack Nicholson in there, it just like some random scene, dude, that would have been.
Unfortunately, he's retired, so I think he would say no. But like, dude, because Jack Nicholson's the only guy I can think of who Nick Cage rivals in terms of gonzo energy. Like, if you need someone to just play a fucking nutbag,
just over the top,
who is a completely unpredictable person but still like kind of likable. Like, Jack Nicholson is the only person I can think of who's for sure able to do that better than Nick Cage.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's and so to that point, the idea of having just sort of this like off the wall cameo. I won't spoil what this actually is, but there was a note you had after we got out of the movie.
Yeah.
That I very much agree with you on. And I think what you were just talking about with the cameo sort of fits right in line with like and it's for the climax of the movie is sort of what that goes for. But there's a little something else to like heighten the weirdness of it, right?
Yeah,
the eccentricity of the film.
I think it was one step short of greatness, right? It's genuinely a good movie.
It very much is.
But at the very end. And it, you know, it's metatextual. It references itself, and it's and the movie becomes a movie within the movie within a movie, and all. But actually, that's what I was hoping would happen. Was that I was hoping they would break reality, just like one more time, like a Blazing Saddles sort of deal, where like somehow like a fight scene would just spill out into the theater. Right. Or some like just some extra little step at the very end to really just cap this off as like, nah, this is fucking crazy. Because Nick Cage is so famously unpredictable that I felt having a somewhat predictable ending and then just kind of making that the joke, like, well, you know, he had to have a predictable ending because he's a movie star and he needs to make money. I thought that was funny, but at the same time, it did kind of smell of, okay, I trust me, I can empathize. If you're a writer and you've written fucking 80% of this movie, there's literally a point in the movie where they're like, how the hell are we going to fucking end this thing? Right? And that is a genuinely good question. And so I think they went and ended it in a way that would make you feel good and would kind of teach the Nick Cage character a lesson.
Yeah, they reined it in. They reined it in a little bit for the ending. You know, like...
And I didn't mind that because, like I said, they at least acknowledge it. I don't want to ruin it, but they definitely acknowledge it, right? Like, they point out this is a Hollywood ending. That's what we need.
Yeah.
How will we make... Because, you know, they're in their Dark Night of the Soul, the darkest point of the story, and they literally say they need a Hollywood ending, and so one is produced. So there is something sort of meta there, but if you could have just found some way to make it break... Like, he learns the lesson in the Hollywood ending, and then suddenly just unlearns the lesson and reverts to his old ways, or just some extra gag, that I think would have pushed it into, like, holy shit, this is, like, actually, like, a great movie, which I would not have expected. You know, I expected a good movie, I got a good movie, but it didn't take that extra leap.
So there was a part of me, you were asking, like, what my first impression was, and I said, well, or, like, what my expectations were, and I said, well, I didn't really have much. To expand upon that just a bit, I guess
it's kind of hard to have expectations.
The
for
most
a movie like
in depth I had thought about it was the fact of like, well, I hope it's good. Like obviously, I'm hoping it's a good movie, but like I feel like it's one of those that's going to be a good bad movie, right? Like this isn't something where it's like, oh no, this is not actually a good film. It's not structured properly or this or that, blah blah blah. Like, but it's fun, it's entertaining, you have a good time, and so okay, take it for what it is, right? It's not Citizen Kane, and okay, well, it's not Citizen Kane. It's also much better than a quote unquote good bad movie. Like I think it actually was a good movie.
Yeah,
I think it's incredibly solid. Like I said, it was structured great. The performances were awesome, and I think they knew what they were doing. So you have this like, cool. Like I said. It's a serious take on a very not serious subject. You know what I mean? And they recognize that, but they did it well.
Well, here's... Okay, so what I thought was interesting is they made it, the style of filmmaking itself was actually pretty subtle.
Okay.
Right? Like it's filmed and edited like an indie film.
Yeah.
Which is I think funny because that's Nick Cage loves a good indie film. But then there's all these ridiculous elements. Like I think the way they made it, generally, except for the earlier point that it just didn't take that extra leap at the very end, generally actually was pretty accurate to the way Nick Cage is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought that like, for instance, Nick Cage's thing, in my opinion, isn't even just that he'll shout, right? Like that's one of his things.
Right.
But it's really that he likes to be unpredictable and he likes to go 120% all the fucking time. So, for instance, when there's the scene where Pedro
it's always
Pascal,
a manic performance.
Yeah.
Whether it's like high or low.
Yeah, he'll like rein it in randomly, and you're like, oh, okay.
Oh, we're doing this now? Yeah.
And he does a good job of that too, where like he suddenly gets emotional, and you're like, oh, Nick Cage.
Just like on a dime, he can pivot.
When he wants to act, he really can't act. That's the funniest thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like when Pedro Pascal says, "Let's take LSD," and they end up like tripping acid, I thought it was really a very wise choice. I don't even know if I would have had the fortitude to make this choice to not let the film making style get super crazy. They actually did some really subtle things when they're like driving around on acid, where like there's a really subtle like, oh, his face kind of waved.
Yeah.
But it was really like, wait, did that happen? Did it not happen?
Yeah.
Instead of just like in your face, Terry Gilliam leaving Las Vegas.
Or Fear and Loathing
Las Vegas.
It
wasn't just like a bunch of wide angle lenses or what you'd expect for an LSD scene. And so stuff like that I thought was very, in a sense, true to Nick Cage. I wonder how much hand Nick Cage had in the directorial choices.
Well, for that specifically, like, you know, Nick Cage is known for being quite the partier, right? He's definitely
Is he? I'm actually unfamiliar. Is that true?
Like, you know, if I'm not mistaken, like him and Vince Neil are like really good friends, lead singer from Motley Crue. So like, and there's like videos of, it's like TMZ videos of them just being fucking hammered in Las Vegas. You know, like coming back to the. It's like, all right, you know, Nicolas Cage, like whether he's reined it in now, he's sort of had a history and reputation of getting wild, being a rock star, movie star, right?
Why wouldn't you?
Yeah. So I feel like
you're Nick fucking Cage.
So I feel like that scene. I mean, I think he knew what he was doing. You know what I mean? I think he was like, okay, I know how to make this work, right? I know how to play this up. And it's like you said, it's very subtle. And even the way they like subtly sort of take you through an acid trip, but instead of it being hours long, you know, it's done in just a few minutes, and it sort of climaxes as they walk up to this massive brick wall. And the way they shoot it, you know, you just see this huge brick wall. They're trying to figure out.
Oh yeah, that was great. The way they did that was very well done.
It was awesome, and it was like, to me, that was like one of those things. Like when you're peak tripping acid, it's like you feel like your face is melting. Like you're just like you couldn't interact with another human being if they were not on acid at that point. You have no ability to do so, you know. And you're trying to navigate those waters. That scene, I felt like represented that so well.
Yeah,
as they're both like crying, and it's just like super emotional.
It was like a really low key way too for Nick Cage to be like, "Yo, I do acid."
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, which if you haven't done acid, and you don't need to do acid to enjoy a movie, but if you have done acid, actually, let's say, you should watch a Nick Cage movie because that really is, I think, the proper way to enjoy a film like Wild at Heart. You know what I mean?
Like, 100%.
Like that's the sort of movie. The first time I ever saw Wild at Heart, full disclosure, I actually was on acid.
Oh, nice, nice.
And when that Chris Isaak song comes in and they don't even have the lyrics, it's just a bow, wow. I was just immediately like, oh yeah, what the fuck is this song? And then you realize, you read about like the history of that film and the history of that song, and you're like, oh, there were a lot of people who went to Wild at Heart, fucked up out of their minds, and had that exact same moment where they're like, dude, what is this song?
Yeah.
And it became a hit literally because of that movie. You know what I mean?
So awesome, dude.
And like, I'm not saying that you don't hear a lick when you're sober and go, oh, what is this song? But like, the way that Lynch makes his films, even though he doesn't actually do drugs himself, which I very much respect, the fact that he doesn't. But
he gets high on that meditation, though.
Yeah,
that's what he does. Yeah,
that's the thing. He's still going for an elevated state of consciousness.
Yeah.
And music really drives that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think Nick Cage, after seeing this movie, I do wonder, I'm like, I feel like this guy, he must take after his uncle, who also, by the way, famously does acid and watches movies, right? Like fucking Francis Ford Coppola literally made Apocalypse Now because he did acid and saw Aguirre Wrath of God in the theater.
That's so fucking
and walked
dope.
out of the theater going, I need to make a movie on a river.
It makes so much sense too. Actually,
Right.
I didn't
You didn't know that?
I did not know that, but that makes so much sense, dude.
He has this whole interview
fucking tea.
where he's like, yeah, man, so I was like really stoked because I liked Herzog, so I went to go see it, and I'm going to trip acid. And then the fact that like that what he walked out thinking is, I gotta make a movie on a river. Not like a movie in the Amazon or about in countries or just a river.
Well, dude, and okay.
And he's right, dude, there's something about that.
Well, not to get off topic, but the scene in Apocalypse Now where they're floating down the fucking river tripping acid, and they start seeing the fucking attack.
Do they trip acid in the
movie? Yeah.
It's been a minute, so is that in the Redux, like the extended one or the
Oh shit, that's actually a good question.
Because I've never seen the extended one.
That may only be in the extended one, but it's at nighttime and it says they're pulling into one of like the main, it may be like the last port that they're actually going to stop at before they go into like essentially uncharted territory of the river.
Oh yeah, I know this.
And I think it's also whenever it's the USO performance.
I think it's right after that.
What, like, isn't that? That's what I think. That's the scene where they're all tripping, right? And at that,
I remember they run into a soldier who's having a bad trip. I don't remember if it's clear to me that Martin Sheen was tripping, but I also haven't seen that movie since I was probably
so actually,
21.
Let me take that back. Martin Sheen may not be tripping, but a few of the people on the boat are tripping.
Yeah.
And they see the fireworks, and it's sort of.
I remember one of them being like having a bad trip for sure.
Yeah. So in tangent, but. I guess funny you say that with Coppola.
So the Coppola family likes getting fucked up. They like wine. They like ass.
We support it. We support it here.
And like, I thought it was interesting too. You'll notice in a lot of old movies, even movies that Nick Cage has been in, the bad guy is a drug dealer. In this movie, he's specifically a weapons dealer. Yeah. Right.
And
I also loved, by the way, speaking of that, I don't want to, once again, without giving anything away.
Yeah, I guess it's like this is a non-spoiler podcast of.
I think who cares? It depends on the movie. But if it's a new movie, I try to not. I'll try not to spoil it. But like
we're respectable human beings.
There's a moment where he is questioning whether Pedro Pascal really is who the CIA says he is, and they're like, "Well, we have, years of fucking surveillance and documented proof." And receipts. And he's like, yeah, well, I have my shamanic actor's instincts. Shamanic acting instincts, or whatever exactly the phrase is, was so fucking perfect for him.
Which is something that he's like very much a believer in real life, if people don't know. Like,
is that true?
It is. No, dude, there are videos about him, like, in interviews, talking about his method. Right, like how he acts and how he views acting, and it is like that. I mean, like it's that shamanistic thing. It's
what makes it shamanistic?
Oh man, honestly, I should have watched one of those videos before we did this podcast. So I actually
first podcast, don't sweat it.
So I can describe it. I'm not going to do it justice, but it's a similar thing to like. Jimmy Page and William S. Burroughs both thought of, Jimmy Page thought he was a sorcerer for sure. He was
a Satanist, right?
Yeah, William S. Burroughs was just a fucking wild dude. But they both were obsessed with Morocco and Moroccan culture. And so they took trips there and basically, it sort of ties into this, but Jimmy Page and Burroughs always said how in Moroccan culture, musicians are the same as magicians, and that you can stand in front of a crowd or a group of people and you can essentially hypnotize them, right? Like you are
I mean, that's for sure true.
You're playing notes, and you have a large group of people in front of you, and you're basically dictating their emotions and their feelings on a whim of whatever you do. And they basically equate that to a very shamanistic type of experience.
A practice.
Right? It's magical, right? That's where the idea was like, oh, is music magic, blah, blah, blah. That's
when you are,
it is
you're tapping
point,
into the ether.
Yeah.
Right.
And the idea of like, oh, you have one person or 3 or 4 people on stage controlling a crowd of 100 plus more, their emotions in the moment, right? And you can sort of, you got them wrapped around your pinky. You can sort of, you are the puppet master of them. So I think Nicolas Cage's interpretation is very much the same thing, but also the idea of like, well, he's inhabiting different roles, blah blah blah.
Well, you should find videos online. The interview I remember of him that made me understand him. In fact, like literally, there was a time in my life, and this was when I was like a little more into. This is when I still trusted the Academy, right? Like when I was like in high school, the way that I researched film, because once I started like really getting into films, I was like, all right, I'll just watch all the fucking Oscar winners. Mm-hmm. Those are the best movies, right?
Yeah.
And so I started with the very mainstream sort of classics like Godfather, Apocalypse Now.
Yeah.
And then eventually worked my way more out to the art house stuff once I went to film school, and there's and so I always thought Nick Cage sucked. I was just like, this guy's a bad actor. I mean, because like when I'm in high school, that's when it's like, not the bees, the bees.
The Wicker Man and like the OG movie is just so good, and the remake is just trash.
It's bad.
Yeah.
And it's from I'm trying to remember who directed the remake, but he's actually like not a bad director. It wasn't for some reason. It's not David Mamet. It was somebody. Fucking hold on, I gotta look this up because I remember being surprised by it. Neil LaBute.
Oh shit. Okay.
Fucking. So like, and dude, he was in Ghost Rider, and I never actually saw that movie Knowing. I kind of question whether that movie Knowing is any good. I do know that he obviously had plugs in that movie. Like when he has the long hair, it's like, yo man, come on.
Yeah.
Right, like you're bald. Like just own it, right? And fucking, so like Nick Cage was just kind of a joke to me. I'd never seen the early stuff. I was like, this guy won an Oscar?
Right.
Like how? And then I see this interview where he's like, basically, I choose a role centered, and I ask myself one question when I'm choosing a role. Can I go 150 million %? And if I can't, I don't want that role.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, so this guy doesn't even give a fuck if his movie's good. He's just trying to have fun.
Yep.
And I think, by the way, especially as I get older, I realize, like, dude, if you're just making sure that you're having fun, they might not all be winners. But when they are, it's one fucking hell of a winner.
Yeah, one, absolutely, dude.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a good way to put it, too, man. It's like, when it all comes together, god damn, is that a fucking awesome combination.
Right.
But then you definitely have a few duds along the way.
So many stinkers.
But
like Nick Cage definitely has more bad. I mean, most actors have more bad movies than good, but he has like an astounding number of bad movies.
And I mean, obviously, like the bankruptcy and all that stuff, that plays into it.
But even before that, like post National Treasure.
Oh yeah.
There was like a period. I mean, I'd have to look back at it, but like National Treasure's what, like 2006?
Yeah,
and then like that. Because Matchstick Men is like 2004 or 5, and he's incredible in Matchstick Men.
Right.
And that's actually a movie I was surprised they didn't reference at all in the.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah, touche.
But but like when Matchstick Men, I went and watched because after I saw that interview, I was like, okay, well, what's a movie where Nick Cage is good? And I like looked up best Nick Cage performances, and it was like Leaving Las Vegas and all this stuff.
I was gonna ask where Leaving Las Vegas.
That's always gonna be top and. I don't actually agree with that, but I was just like, oh, Matchstick Men is directed by Ridley Scott. I loved Ridley Scott. He was like the first filmmaker I really connected with, actually.
Okay.
Because of Blade Runner.
Fuck yeah.
Blade Runner and Alien, dude.
Hell
and then Gladiator. And anyway, but fucking Matchstick Men, actually a very good movie, and Nick Cage is just fucking incredible in it.
I should go back and watch that. That's a movie that I haven't seen since like it came out, and I was much younger.
Oh, you probably will not remember the mini twists.
I was gonna say, yeah.
What that means, yeah. The twists in that movie were actually, they're the sort of twists that I appreciate. Like, sometimes a twist is just cheap.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, I had no ending, so, I don't know.
Derp or derp. Oh, okay, cool.
Fucking aliens are real.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Right.
Fucking, she was his mother.
Oh.
Oh, wait, that's Oedipus.
Oh.
Sorry, that's not a cheap one.
Turns out this village is actually in modern times, and
oh god,
you know, like you're just like
that's a bad twist.
You're like, whoa, dude, never thought of that before.
Man, so they're Amish, okay?
yeah, dude.
Fucking, but yeah, like the twists in Matchstick Men were really good. His performance is really good, and that was also the first time I saw him play off of a good actor.
Oh, okay.
I think because you'll notice when he's in fucking National Treasure, he's playing off of Doug from The Hangover.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he's not, there's no one for him to really, like, there's John Voight, I guess, is there, but, like, there's no one really for him to, like, bounce off of. But when you have Sam Rockwell, who I would actually say is probably, in the post-Nick Cage era, actually the most similar to Nick Cage as an actor, of the A-list today. Yeah. But Sam Rockwell is so fucking good. I would say, as a pure actor, he's a better actor than Nick Cage.
Sam Rockwell is also a dude that I think is very underrated as an actor.
It's because he's never had a hit.
Yeah.
You know?
Moon was the first movie I saw with him long time ago. I was just like, not the first movie I saw with him, sorry. But it was the first movie that I saw that he was in where I really took stock of like, oh, this guy is a G and he holds it down on his fucking own.
Ironically, the first movie that I got into Sam Rockwell from, other than Matchstick Men, was The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Because he's running around, stepping on rakes, shouting, Magrathea! And it's like the only part of that movie that I actually found to like be actually hilarious was Sam Rockwell. I thought the rest of that movie was a massive disappointment.
Ann and I actually went back and watched that recently. Because that's her stepdad, that's his favorite book.
The book is
incredible.
Yeah, next level.
But anyway, yeah, Sam Rockwell, awesome. Nick Cage level.
Well, and so earlier we were at dinner, and a friend of ours asked about when we were telling him we were doing the podcast on this movie. He's like, is Nick Cage really such an icon that he deserves to make a movie about him fucking self? And that is a good question to ask. And my response was, hell fucking yes he is. Because, is Sam Rockwell? No. Sam Rockwell will never be able to do that. No. But Nick Cage is right. Or Nicky Cage, pardon me, is right when he's talking to Nick Cage. And he's like, you're not an actor, you're a movie star. Nick Cage really was one of the biggest movie stars on the planet for a solid fucking 15, 20 years.
Well, and to get back to your point earlier, it's like, when it works and everything comes together, it's fucking magic. Right? Like...
Yeah.
Awesome. Sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes you get duds. But even then, it's like the performance is so over the top. There's so much commitment to it that it's like, dude, whether you like the movie overall or not, you have to sort of like sit there in like bewilderment of Nick Cage's performance. Like almost.
And then remember he's doing this in front of like 50 people who are just standing there being quiet.
Right? Again, like the perfect example. The perfect example of like really bad Nick Cage. Oh no, not the Beast.
Not the Beast.
Right? Where
not
it just is so.
It's so insanely funny though.
It is, dude.
Like there's you think he doesn't know?
Yeah, of course he does, dude. Like he has to not think like, again, going back to the shamanistic aspects of his performance, like I think he does understand. And it's the idea of like, can I go balls to the wall on this? I can. I don't give a fuck about
dude,
anything
like when
else,
you see him doing karate kicks in fucking Wild at Heart just on the side of the road.
Dude.
Like when she's like, change the radio station and he because the news is depressing. And so once he gets off the news, he gets to like some heavy metal and he just like goes, he just starts karate kicking and kick dancing.
It's so ridiculous.
And you're just like, that shit was so funny that when I first saw that, our old friend, old friend of the absurd, and Ben and I, we started just karate kicking in parking lots.
You have to.
for the next 6 months of our lives, we thought that was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
And that's all because of Nick Cage. Like, there's a video, if you look at the Absurd's Squashing Pumpkins music video, there's actually a shot of all three of us just karate kicking.
You guys doing that?
Yeah, we literally did that just to like hype ourselves up before shows. We would start karate kicking the air in the middle of parking lots.
Honestly, that's a pretty awesome pre-show ritual. Yeah.
And like, dude, and that's another, like, once again, keeping in like, he weirdly loves Elvis.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
He loves the Elvis thing.
Yeah.
And one thing, by the way, to bring it back to Sam Rockwell, I wonder if he's friends with Sam Rockwell. Because the reason I asked that is I hadn't actually connected these dots until about, let's say 90 seconds ago. But one thing I mentioned to you, both right after we saw the film and right before we did this podcast, is how much this film, The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, reminds me of Seven Psychopaths.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
Nick Cage or someone has for sure seen Seven Psychopaths. And I think, I do wonder, like, did he say when he was developing this movie, I want something like Seven Psychopaths? Because it's so similar in the structure and execution, in the way that it is written, in the way that, like, the movie is writing itself as it goes along.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And they're talking about what the ending's going to be.
Yep.
Right, and who the characters really are. Like, it really references it. If there's one thing that holds the movie back from greatness, other than the fact it doesn't take that extra step, it's that not only it not taking that extra step leaves it in the shadow of Seven Psychopaths forever, right?
Right.
Because it doesn't transcend the influence.
Yeah.
But like, I hadn't thought about the fact he was in Matchstick Men with Sam Rockwell. He knows Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
So I almost wonder if he either watched Sam Rockwell in that movie and was like, fuck, I wish that I had that role. Or if he just loves the movie, or what. And I will say, by the way, the other thing that just puts Seven Psychopaths is a great film. This is a very good film, right? Like,
oh, yeah.
The thing that puts Seven Psychopaths over it is that the writer, Martin McDonagh, is a great fucking writer. He's just an incredible writer.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Bruges, I don't know if you saw that.
Oh, fuck yeah.
3 billboards over at
Actually went back and watched In Bruges after I watched Seven Psychopaths because a roommate at the time was such a massive fan of Colin Farrell and In Bruges. He was just like, all right, you dug this movie, gotta go check it out.
And I think that, like, I think it's interesting that Nick Cage, throughout the movie, they're talking about how he needs a comeback. It's like, well, if you're gonna do a riff on a movie of the past 20 years, I honestly can't name too many better mainstream films to do your riff on. Like, I'm not blaming the film for...
No.
But did you see those? You saw those similarities too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think it matches up? Do you think there are ways in which it was better?
Okay, so I think I'm gonna give the nod. I'd give the nod to Seven Psychopaths. I would say that's the better movie overall. But I think Unbearable Weight is, how do you say? I think it's very close. I think they did.
It's definitely a little bit more accessible to a mainstream audience than Seven Psychopaths too, which I don't mind.
I think they did a good job comparatively to it.
Yeah.
Like you said, yeah, for the mainstream audience. I mean, Seven Psychopaths and Bruges both, like, I don't think this is on that level. But that's not to say that it's, lagging very far behind either. I think, like, it's... I just don't think it's exactly the same thing.
It's what I mean? Here's what's interesting is I just realized, if Seven Psychopaths is about the writer, the star of the movie is the writer. In this film, the star is the star. So it's doing almost like the same thing mechanically, but with different parts, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It does.
So it's a little bit, this one's more about acting, whereas that one's more about writing, and since ultimately, let's be real, you can make a great movie with some bad actors and great writing. It's really hard to make a great movie with bad writing and great actors.
Yeah.
You know? So I think that might be the reason it gets the edge.
I think that's actually a really solid point. So like a point that's actually like tangible. You know what I mean?
But his performance is very all over the place, and there are moments where there were at least 2 moments in the film where I was like, oh, well, Nick Cage is actually is actually acting here.
Yeah, I mean,
he's not just mocking himself the whole time. He's actually like really acting.
The way it starts off, man, like...
And Pedro Pascal's really acting, too.
Yeah.
It's much more of an actor's film than a writer's film.
Yes, I 100% agree with that. And getting back to like the performances, I thought were really, really well done all across the board. But Nicolas Cage, early on in the film, when he's trying to get the role, right, that he's having to actually like come in and audition for.
Oh yeah.
And he very much wants this role, like the sense of desperation that comes through in Nick Cage's character, in my opinion, is very realistic, right? And like it makes you feel for him. It's almost like it's sort of like him driving in the car, basically going to a place where he's going to see...
He's meeting with the director,
yeah. And he's just going to, swoop in and sort of give him an audition off the cuff, right? In the middle of public. It's not exactly a scheduled audition.
He's told he doesn't need to read, and he decides he wants to read anyway, yeah.
And so he goes in...
Which is a hilarious inside joke, by the way, because so many actors, they're like, I'm not going to read.
Right.
So Nick Cage loves acting so much that even though his agent says he's not going to read, he's like, no, I'm going to fucking read.
I'm going to find this guy. I'm going to go...
I'm going to tell him his own monologue.
Yes, exactly.
In the middle of a parking lot.
I'm gonna do this monologue right here, right now. And so he does it, man, and it's fucking incredible. I think like that whole...
I mean, the accent he does is terrible.
It's awful.
Yeah,
I mean,
like the worst Boston accent
it's so amazingly bad, but so committed.
Yeah, right.
That's
the essence of Cage, right?
And then afterwards, you just see the desperation, and how bad he really wants that role. Like he needs that role. And then this is not a spoiler alert. He does not get this
is like
role.
The first 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah. Chaos ensues, but he doesn't get the role, and then the dejection that you see immediately upon it, it's like, man.
And he quits.
It does kind of feel like you're just like riding around in the car with this like really sad,
semi-manic,
washed up acting. And then the movie honestly just completely
it goes off the rails for the next hour.
Yeah.
Which I thought, like, dude, once you get the situation set up, and then so the key, we were talking a little bit the other day about how some films like say Caddyshack or even Animal House,
right,
or The Hangover, once the shock value of some of the jokes, like the surprise is gone, there aren't enough layers in the writing to really make it stay that funny. Whereas you watch a movie like fucking Some Like It Hot or The Big Lebowski, and shit is so well written and it's set up so great. Like Some Like It Hot, there's a reason why it's pretty much universally seen as like the best comedy film ever, I would say.
Right.
I would say it's, at the very least, if you were trying to teach someone how to write great comedy, it would be the best example ever.
Okay.
Because aside from maybe some Marx Brothers stuff where you're just getting really obvious examples of...
Yeah.
With the Marx, you'll get a really obvious example of how to set up a situation.
Yeah.
But with this, they're setting up the situation. Okay, they're musicians, they're in drag, they're pretending to be girls, but one of them is in love with this other girl, and then the other one has a guy who's in love with him. And you basically... And if they break character, then they're dead, but still one of them's breaking character because he wants pussy. And it just... So there's all these layers of plot that are driving the humor. So when you watch it and you see how these pieces are fitting together, you're just dying laughing, right?
Yeah. And you can return to it. You can go back and watch it and you pick up on new things.
You appreciate it more.
Exactly.
Because even let's say you've seen The Big Lebowski 500 times, there's nothing new. you'll still appreciate it because you're just like, God damn, how they fucking set this up so good.
Yes.
They set it up so well.
Yeah.
So in this film, I'd like to see it again. But I thought that from the time where he arrives in Spain, right? Or really from the time he meets with his agent, played by Neil Patrick Harris, and they go to that really weird massage place where they just get whipped.
Yeah.
Fucking, from that point through about really the climax, it is just like nonstop like insanity.
It is, yeah.
And they do a really good job, like when there's a scene where he has to break in and he's helping the CIA, right? And he's simultaneously like arrogantly talking about how good of a spy he is, of course, while just fucking up everything and doing some really broad physical comedy, which is something you actually don't really get to see Nick Cage do very often.
You don't.
Right?
You don't. No.
And you know, if he's found out, he's dead, right? But like he's being paid to be there. This guy fucking loves him, so like they play with that a lot, where he's like really nervous that Pedro Pascal's found out, but really he just wants to do acid with him or whatever the fuck.
Right.
And like, I think from there through really the scene when they're like, how are we gonna end this thing? There's a solid hour of genuine like comedic gold. Like this is really well put together. Like
it is.
Hats off to the guys who wrote it.
Yep.
What's his name? Eden or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, Kevin Eden.
Uh-huh. Like that's a good fucking comedic setup, and that's not easy to do. Like it's easy to identify the pieces necessary. Just like with music, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to know, like, oh, well, these chords and this sort of resolution works. Right? But to find a way to do it where it actually works,
it doesn't feel
much easier said than done.
It's not like a matter of like having a formula to do it. It's a matter of like, no. We're going to tie it in this way. This is going to work. This is how we're going to make it work. We're going to set it up in such a manner that like you're going to believe it.
I would say the only formulaic part was the stuff with his daughter and the family.
It was, and that gets back to, I guess
the Hollywood ending or whatever. Yeah.
I'm gonna use the restroom real quick.
Yeah. I'm curious. When you get back, I'll ask you a question.
Yes.
Till then, we might as well talk about some of the cinematography, because I'll nerd out on that while he's gone. It's filmed digitally. I thought that, frankly, there's many times where it's all about the way you use things. I'm not a purist about analog or digital or whatever. It's all about how you use it. If you're making Sin City, you really should be going digital, right? But if you're making There Will Be Blood, you've made a mistake by going digital, right? And that's a controversial statement, maybe, but you have, right? You're trying to make an old, epic film set in the times before digital stuff existed, so just having like this weird digital look to it just doesn't fucking play. In that movie, I would say they aren't actually using, and There Will Be Blood, they're not actually using the digital cameras to their advantage in any real way, right? Whereas you watch a movie like, say, Collateral by Michael Mann, and they're using digital cameras phenomenally, right? They're doing things with the digital cameras you just couldn't do with a film camera, or at least not easily. I thought this film actually did a really good job of not drawing attention to its own cinematography while having some really good cinematography. Like we mentioned earlier, there are some shots when they're doing acid that are subtly trippy, but there's a few shots throughout the film that are like, oh wow, that's a good shot. Like, oh man, you get that. There's that feeling of awe when you see a good landscape or whatever. I thought that the cinematographer did a really good job of getting enough of those in, while keeping. Oh yeah, I actually do need more of that. Thank you. Some Jesperson Reserve.
Yes.
Okay. I'm talking about the cinematography.
Oh, beautiful. Okay.
I thought that it had a really interesting balance where it's not. Nothing in the cinematography pissed me off, which that might sound like a low bar, but that's actually a kind of high bar, because especially when you're dealing with digital, there's a lot of ways in which you can over color correct, or you can just draw attention to yourself And in my opinion, the only time cinematography should draw attention to itself is when you're just like, holy fuck, that's awesome. And the rest of the time, good composition, don't make me notice you.
Right. It's like when it's extraordinary, it stands out, right? It's like you...
And I wouldn't say this is like the best I've seen, but there were a few shots where you're like...
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's a pretty good fucking shot.
Yeah. That's like, oh, that's a fucking great setup. And to brag on this guy, like, I think you have a really good eye for setting up shots for cinematography in general. So I get that feeling.
When you're just like, don't do something that I know. Like when I watch a David Fincher movie, David Fincher is my favorite example of this because he's the most just clunky of all the digital fiend directors. Right? Gone Girl is the movie I think of a lot of the time. Like when I watch that movie, Gone Girl,
fair enough. Yeah.
There's this. It's like, oh man. Isn't it cool how gray and blue this hallway is? It's like, no, it's not cool, because no hallway has ever fucking looked like that.
Right.
And there's literally no reason that this movie needs a gray and blue hallway like that. This is a movie about a guy whose relationship is falling apart because she's a fucking psychopath.
She's insane.
Right. I don't need it to look like the fucking, like an iPod, or like a fucking commercial. I need it to look real.
Yeah.
Or whatever, you know what I mean? Or if you're going to make it look fake, there needs to be a reason for it. And sometimes I feel like David Fincher just chooses what he chooses because I like the colors, you know?
Fair enough, yeah.
You watch The Social Network and it's just like, oh, none of this inspires me, right? Even, like, except, I mean, the rowing scene looks great.
It's visually incredibly brooding. You know what I mean?
It's just it's over-polished. That's what I'd say. It's like, you put a little bit too much work in. There's a saying. There's a saying that editors have, which is "do it in pre," which is a mock on "we'll fix it in post," or "fix it in pre." But there's also a saying, or just a phrase that's used, which is "do it in camera." Things that are done in camera, according to some people who are maybe more purists, always look better. But I absolutely agree with that. When you watch a movie like Lord of the Rings or the first Jurassic Park. Part of why those effects hold up is because as much as you could do in camera, they did in camera. And you only use the digital stuff to do what you literally couldn't do in camera. So when you're over-coloring something, it's like, you could have just lit the shot right.
Okay, so I was going to say there's a...
It's like auto-tuning your cinematography.
There's a really famous fashion designer, fashion mogul, her name's blanking me, but she has a famous quote about minimalism. Mm-hmm. Someone asks her about minimalism, and she says she detests it, but she basically says, for the style of minimalism is the absence of style. That's her opinion on minimalism in general. Takes no style to do so. It's a complete void of style. That's why you get something that's minimalist.
I wildly disagree with
that. Well, but I was going to say, but you understand her sentiment.
Right? I think if what she's saying is you're not trying to do too much, right? Like sometimes, because she's talking fashion, right? If your idea of style is 1,000 pins on your jacket and embroidery and 70 rings, I know who's talking, but fucking, then it becomes gaudy. Right? Well, so if we're talking fashion, I can understand the idea of sometimes there is more style in doing less. Is that what she's saying?
So I always took it as this. Basically, the meaning of that quote being like, well, you lean into the style of minimalism because you don't really have that much to say to begin with. Right?
Sure.
Your slate's not that filled up to begin with, so you can't really make an expression, or you don't have much to dwell on to make an expression. So you rely on a lack of substance. That's the way that I
think it's so circumstantial. Like, I agree with that in half of cases. Like, if we're talking about a Rothko painting, I 100% agree. Like, that guy has nothing interesting to say.
It's definitely a blanket statement, right?
But if we're talking Jack White, that minimalism worked great.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean?
So, the point in me bringing that up, though, was to go to your David Fincher point.
Yeah.
Which is, do you think the reason why he gets that, like, awful, gray,
over color corrected. Yeah.
Do you think that is
or green?
Right, like
Yes.
it's like and you're like, why is there a hallway this color? There's never been a fucking hallway lit this way or this color in the history of man. Like, do you think that's because of the fact that he's actually lacking some sort of
Absolutely.
lacking a statement that is of substance?
Absolutely, I do, because Fincher's fatal flaw as a director, more than his affinity for overproduced digital compositions and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, mood his biggest failing is he's never said anything interesting. Right? He's not a writer. And look, you don't have to necessarily be a writer to be a great director. Ridley Scott is not a writer.
It's his Aliens. Was it Aliens 3 he did, which was fucking terrible.
Oh, that was so worse. I forgot he did Alien 3. Yeah,
right. It's like it's just
so bad.
It's really fucking awful.
It's somehow worse than that one that Jean-Pierre Jeunet did. The guy who did City of Lost Children.
Yeah.
It's somehow worse than Alien 4, in my opinion.
Right.
Although that one was written by Joss Whedon, so it had an advantage. But because he's actually a good writer. But yeah, I think that Fincher is lacking in substance. Absolutely, I think like the most substantive film he ever made was Fight Club. Fight Club, in my opinion, has a very muddled message, anyways. But that's more on Chuck Palahniuk than it is on Fincher, to be honest. I do think though Fincher makes some, he just makes some in my opinion, just honestly trashy decisions in that movie. Like, he makes tacky decisions.
Right.
Like, we're going to zoom inside the bomb. You didn't actually need to do that at all. There was literally nothing gained for this movie from doing that.
Right.
You did it because you could, and look at me. Aren't I special?
It's masturbatory.
It's so masturbatory.
And it's almost like he's basically servicing himself rather than servicing...
absolutely.
Like the true point
of the movie.
The film.
Yeah, and I think so, half the time he doesn't fathom the true point, or he's doing,
for sure.
or he's dealing with like an Aaron Sorkin script that doesn't really have a fucking point, like The Social Network. Like, what is the point of that movie?
Right. What?
There isn't one.
Real quick, what's your thoughts on Seven?
It's pretty good. Seven's pretty fucking good.
I was gonna say, I really, really love Seven. I know we just shat on David Fincher, which like
I love shitting on David Fincher. I don't know why, but there's something about his filmmaking style that I just loathe.
No, I feel it because I mean it's exclusively his in a way. Like you see something that he does, and it's almost immediately like, oh yeah, this is Fincher.
He's like,
I do love Seven,
he's
and
like
I do
Creed.
love Fight Club though.
He's like the Creed of directors. In that, like, I can see the directors he likes. And I like the directors he likes. The directors he likes are directors I like. Right? Like, Creed loves Pearl Jam. Creed loves Alice in Chains.
Yeah, they love them some grunge, but
but they suck.
Yeah.
Right? They suck even though they're doing it, and because people like grunge, enough people will buy it, it's popular.
Yep.
But you'll notice, dude, I don't think that anyone that I've ever taken seriously, really, has ever said, if you ask, hey man, who are your favorite directors working today? Very few people will say Fincher. I'm sure some will.
That's true. I mean, he's definitely not like...
Have you ever met a Fincher fanboy?
Not personally, no.
No, I mean, yeah, this is totally anecdotal, but like, I've met...
Right, yeah, of course.
Lynch fanboys, I've met I'm an Aronofsky fanboy, I've met fucking... fanboys for the guy who did The Northman, Robert Eggers.
Yeah, Robert Eggers, yeah.
Like, he's done 3 movies he is fucking fanboy. Or I guess 4 movies now.
Ari Aster's got fanboys right now. Midsummer and fucking... God damn it, dude. What's... Hereditary, sorry. Hereditary,
right.
Yeah.
Like, there are fanboys for good directors. I really do not meet many people who are going to speak to me the gospel of fucking Fincher.
No, it's like you said, that's obviously an anecdotal example. But very true, though.
Yeah.
Like, I've definitely met Lynch fanboys before. I kind of am a Lynch fan. I was going to say, like, I definitely kind of am, dude. I mean, obviously, you meet Tarantino.
Dude, Denis Villeneuve.
Fanboys. Yeah, like...
Denis Villeneuve. I was a fanboy of him well before Dune or even... Like, I saw the movie Enemy.
Yeah.
Starring Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah, dude.
And I was like, this guy knows how to fucking make movies. I only had to see one fucking movie of his.
Just be like, this guy gets it.
I went and watched Prisoners, I went and watched Incendies, I was like, this guy knows how to fucking make movies, dude.
Right.
I still don't actually think he's topped Enemy. But you know, once you start getting into mainstream stuff like that, the machine kind of eats you.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, look, to give Fincher some credit, he started in the mainstream machine. He did manage to make Seven, which is a good movie. I think Zodiac is actually a really good movie.
Zodiac is a very underrated movie.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
But once again, what the fuck is it about? It's about the Zodiac Killer, but what is it saying?
Yeah. I mean, well, that's actually a really good point for that movie specifically because it's... The whole thing...
Obsession is bad.
I feel like it's shot and the story is told in a very open-ended sort of way.
That's the movie, though, of his that I do think is shot very well. I think he has the same cinematographer for everything. But like the scene where Jake Gyllenhaal goes in the basement of some guy who it turns out is not the Zodiac Killer, but you're not sure if he is.
Well, that's...
The lighting in that scene is really good. So it's not that like Fincher can't do it, it's that he's more interested in his fucking
he just
toys.
Chooses to not do that. Yeah, and look...
And to bring it back to this film, I thought that the cinematographer did a good job of not getting in the way, giving you enough flavor where you're like, oh, that's a good shot, that's interesting, that's a good shot, right? But there was never a shot that I felt was out of place. And when you're dealing with someone like Fincher, think about the fact that I point out the movie Zodiac because I think it's out of place that there's good shots in it.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's the total inversion of what you're seeing here, where like he's so regularly getting in the way of me enjoying the film.
Well, also what's kind of funny about the Zodiac specifically, like I'm also, you know this, but for any listeners and viewers out there, I like myself a good dose of high strangeness, true crime, that sort of thing. Obviously, the Zodiac Killer, they never caught him. You know, he remained at large. Blah blah blah. Who he was a mystery. Maybe that had something to do with how Fincher was actually able to tell that story or shoot that movie, in the sense it's like, well, you don't have an ending in real life. There is no actual conclusion to this. It's open-ended.
I wonder who wrote Zodiac. I feel like it was someone like Tony Gilroy or William Moynihan, or it was probably someone who's a mainstream writer, but I'm actually not sure. James Vanderbilt. I'm not familiar with him. He wrote White House Down and The Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Oof.
Okay, so there you go.
Well, I never saw. I didn't see either of those two movies, so I can't comment on them. White House Down was supposed to be shit, though, right?
He wrote. You know what he wrote? He wrote The Losers. You ever see that with Jeffrey Dean Morgan?
No, I haven't actually.
It's actually kind of a good movie. It's like an A-Team sort of.
Oh, okay. All right.
Zoe Saldana's in it.
Okay, yeah, I feel that. The Losers. Okay.
Yeah, I actually kind of enjoyed that movie because it knows what it is.
Right. See, I'll give it...
That's the other thing. Fincher never knows what fucking movie he's making. So
what I was going to say, hey, piggybacks off of that, is basically like, I will give a movie a lot of points, a lot of credit for them recognizing and understanding what type of project they're actually making.
Right.
Right. And again, to go back to what I said earlier, this idea of it's like, they're taking... for the unbearable weight of massive talent. They're taking this...
Such a hilarious title.
It is, yeah, it is. It's like... So they're taking this movie seriously, even though they understand that it is not serious. It's just like, so, you know, it's like this idea of like, they are committed to this project that they know is extremely meta. It's over the top. It's fucking ridiculous. Mm-hmm. But whatever. They're going for
By taking it seriously, what do you mean? Do you mean they're trying to execute something artistically solvent?
Of quality. There's there's a common aesthetic there. There's something that's relatable. It's not that they're going
not
into
just making a joke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're also not going into it with the misconception that like this is going to be the Maltese Falcon. This is going to be Citizen Kane. This is going to be the greatest movie that's made in the last decade. No, man, like, it's a good movie. You can take it serious. You can bring an aesthetic to it and have it be relatable. But you also know it's a super meta movie about Nicolas Cage fucking being Nicolas Cage.
Right.
And we're going to make this good. This is going to be a good, cohesive film.
Because Nicolas Cage is actually good. So if you can't... If this movie was bad, that would have actually been a really big problem.
It would have... Yeah.
You know
that would have been shit.
That would... in a sense, the risk he's taking with this movie, it's like if this movie's, and this is part of why I understand why they didn't take that extra leap at the very end. It's like, okay,
a little too much zaniness.
If you know you can guarantee an 8 out of 10, or you can go for a 10 out of 10, but risk getting a 3 out of 10, let's say, right?
Right.
To be fair, the latter is more in keeping with what Nick Cage fucking does.
Right.
However, since the movie's about Nick Cage, you kind of need the guaranteed 8 out of 10 more than you need to take the risk. If that makes sense. You know what I mean?
And what I'll say is, like, for the end of the movie, without giving spoilers away, the way that they rein the movie in and really bring it to sort of this, okay, we're back in the quote-unquote real world for a few minutes. We're giving you a very, like a very Hollywood type of ending. It's going to be a happy ending. We're not going to break the fourth wall. I actually thought they pulled out of the story and ended it in that manner in a clever way. It was cool the way they did it. I would have liked to see him go over the top a bit more, but I feel like I went from sort of being on the edge of my seat and being like, okay, what the fuck's gonna happen, to pulling out and
I know it's gonna happen. Right,
okay,
right.
Cool, for sure.
And they do telegraph it so that it's not exactly a disappointment.
No, I think it's
like, well, we did tell you.
It's a smooth, I think it's a smooth.
We did tell you this is going to be turn into an action climax. You know, like we told you exactly what was going to happen. If you're disappointed, that's on fucking you.
Right.
You know?
Right. It's sort of like it pulls back and all of a sudden you're just like, oh, okay, word, yeah, all right, so we're back here. Cool. Well, I'm glad that it ended.
Honestly,
I'm happy that
I don't mind the ending, because it's like, here's the other thing I think that I appreciate about it is this is obviously, there's a point where, like, Nicky Cage says to Nick Cage where he's like, we're back, or whatever, and right before he, like, kisses him or whatever the fuck, and having this scene where he, like, has that Liam Neeson moment where he's like, you're back, baby, to his daughter.
Yes, yeah.
And then kind of like, resolving that whole plot, the family plot, is sort of a way to make the movie accessible, especially to, I'd say, younger people.
Yeah.
And at this point, Nick Cage is old enough where it's like, man, a lot of the people going to this movie are probably dads and moms who were like 20 to 30 years old when fucking Raising Arizona came out.
Right.
And now they're older and their kids might not get it. Or maybe they were even 15 when that shit came out and they have a fucking 16-year-old kid now. And okay, let's give the people who are showing the generational people, or the people who are generationally passing on the legend of Nick Cage through this movie, something to kind of make it all tie together.
Yeah. Yeah, and they put a nice little bow on it,
Like they almost directly acknowledge that this is a vehicle to get Nick Cage back into consciousness, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And I imagine there are probably going to be a lot of fucking, like, millennials, or post-millennials especially, who really don't know anything about, like, my girlfriend she's basically a post-millennial, right?
Right.
She has seen National Treasure.
Okay.
And that's it. Like, she doesn't know shit
it.
about... I think I showed her Wild at Heart. Like, I think she understood that was Nick Cage from Wild at Heart. And by the way, really good choice of theirs to choose Wild at Heart Nick Cage as the iconic young Nick Cage. Because that really is, like... I didn't realize it when I first saw it, but, like, as time goes on, it's like, that is, like, the greatest Nick Cage role.
Fucking preach, dude. I'll tell you what. Yeah. The first scene that young Nick Cage is in there, when I realized, like...
He's got the snakeskin jacket and the dumbass hair.
They are referencing that Nick Cage character. Like, that in itself
Nick Cage.
Made me so happy, dude. Because, we'll keep this tangent to a minimal here, but, like, the first time I saw Wild at Heart, like, after I'd watched some of the bigger David Lynch movies, I didn't know anyone who knew about this movie. And I see this movie and I'm just like, I fucking... love this, dude. This is incredible. It's so weird. It's so dark. It's so over the top. There's all these all these similarities with the Wizard of Oz, dude. It's really fucking weird.
Yeah, it's David Lynch's take on the Wizard of Oz. Yeah,
and like, you know, I was never able to like bro out or bond with anyone else over that movie for the longest time. But it's like that character is so fucking great, and all, in my opinion, like the right and wrong reasons. So like when this movie referenced him, I was just like, fuck yeah, dude, I'm happy already.
The funniest part in that movie, and probably I think maybe the moment that encapsulates Nick Cage the most, other than this here's a snakeskin jacket, represents my dedication to individuality and personal freedom.
It's so good, dude.
Other than that line is when like he turns around and looks at these gangbangers, and look, I'm quoting a movie. I'm not saying a bad word. He turns around and looks at these gangbangers at the end of the movie. He's like, "What do you faggots want?"
Yeah, dude.
And then he just gets his ass kicked.
He's just like supreme edgelord status, and then like he said, just gets his fucking ass beat.
And he gets his ass beat to fucking hell. And then Laura Palmer shows up and tells him that like he needs to go back to his woman, and it's just such a bizarre way, and you're just kind of like, why did David Lynch have him say that? Of all things he could say, and then okay, sure, there is, I think, a theme of like, okay, only someone who's desperately upset about the way their life has gone is really interested in insulting someone based on something as frivolous as their sexuality. Right?
Yes,
I think there's probably some thematic element there. But I think it's more like, what is the most stupid, offensive, ridiculous Nick Cage thing this guy can say?
Well, it's like edgelord before edgelord became a thing.
Just
you know
like,
what I mean?
Yeah, it was like, even then when it wasn't as bad to say that word, it's still just like, man, that's a really dumb thing to say in that situation. Like,
right, no, for sure.
That's like, even if you think that word's okay to say, you probably shouldn't say it then. You know, like, so the whole thing is just a joke. And of course, I'm sure that someday David Lynch will get canceled for that scene. But to me, that's like the funniest. That is the funniest fucking moment of the movie.
It's, I mean, well, dude, all the, like, I remember when
but let me note, it would not be funny if he didn't get his ass kicked. If he just called some people the F word.
And then just turned around and like strolled away.
But like, yeah, if he just called him the F word and walked away, it's like, okay. Like, it's like when you watch Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, and there's a point where like they hug and then they call each other fags.
Right.
And it just kind of comes off like,
And it's like, oh, okay, dude.
I'm not a super PC guy, but it's like there's no real humor there. The humor is just that, like, I guess it's funny to be gay, but I grew up in a time where it's not that funny. It's just kind of the thing that some people are. But
also
in Nick Cage's case, him insulting these people who have knives.
Right. Well, also, like, in the case of, like, Bill and Ted, it's like, yeah, you guys are friends, dude. Like,
well, no, this is Robot Bill and Ted. So they are at least...
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
They're the bad guys.
Yeah.
But it's still, like, to me, it's like...
It's
what
like
was the joke?
Yeah, it's kind of... It's
you know
like
what, they do that?
A hack thing.
They do it in the first one, too. Actually, when he's like, dude, I thought you were dead. And he's like, no, I fell out of my suit when I hit the floor. And then they hug each other, and then they call each other fags.
Yeah, it's like... So
that's just a very 90s...
It's a little hack.
A 90s
like
hetero hacky joke.
It's like, yeah, for sure. But to what you said, like the David Lynch thing, like that's... God damn, that's so perfectly in tune with Nick Cage's character. That's such a great...
That's like what I imagine Nick Cage would do if he was jumped by gangbangers. After seeing that entire movie,
it's like, bro, he's literally like... He's fucking like headbanging... I think they call it slam dancing in the movie when he's like
it's slam dancing, yeah.
You know, so they're slam dancing, quote unquote, at the thrash metal nights, and then he's just fucking Laura Dern. And they're going back and they're fucking dancing, listening to metal that he sings.
By the way, this show is brought to you by Coast Smokes.
Yeah. Coast Smokes.
Anyway, sorry.
And he busts out into Elvis singing, and he goes back, fucks Laura Dern some more. Her mom wants someone to kill Nicolas Cage. You know, it's a chaotic, incredible movie.
Did you know that that's Laura Dern's actual mother? I don't know. I knew that, but I wasn't. So a lot of people have no idea.
No, I didn't. So she was
That's her. Her dad is Bruce Dern.
So that. Okay, yeah, 100%.
And I can't remember her mom's name, but she was like a big star. They were both big stars in the 70s. And her mom...
Man, she
won an
good at
Oscar
being
for that.
insane in that movie. Man.
Can you believe she won an Oscar, though, for that? That's like...
Did she really?
She either won or got nominated. Diane Ladd. And so she's part of the Ladd family. You know, dude, the Ladds...
Holy shit.
I have to assume she must be related to Alan Ladd. I haven't actually looked that up, but...
Yeah.
Alan Ladd was Shane, right? And, like, the OG Western.
Yeah.
Right? And then Alan Ladd Jr. was, like, the head of fucking 20th Century Fox when Star Wars got made. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And then Alan Ladd went and made Blade Runner. Like, these people are
Hollywood
legends.
Dynasty.
Right. So, like, you know, Laura Dern, I don't know how much she paid her dues, but she is a great actress. Diane Ladd, I'm pretty sure, literally won the Oscar. I have to find this out. Yeah. No, she was nominated.
Okay.
But either way, like, the fact she was nominated for rubbing lipstick all over her face.
Dude. But it's so fucking creepy, though, man.
It is,
the first... I just remember the first time I watched that movie.
What she's doing is she's being Nick Cage.
It's so off-put. Yeah.
She's doing something, like, that's not something Diane Ladd had ever done. She's the only other character really in that movie. I guess Bobby Peru kind of, but, like, she's the only other character in that movie who's that unpredictable. Which is why it makes sense that she would want to fuck Nick Cage, why she'd want him dead.
Bobby Peru is just a weird, off-putting character. It's not that he's unpredictable.
He's one thing, yeah.
She's unpredictable. Nick Cage is unpredictable. Nick Cage is also just so over the fucking top in that movie and all his mannerisms, which, again, that's why the end of that movie is so great. Like, that's just like a great line. It's like, of course this character would do that, and of course he gets the shit beat out of him.
How can I just get my ass kicked?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, seeing that character referenced in Unbearable Weight was really a treat. And that, to me, like, right off the bat.
You couldn't have chosen... If you had done him from Raising Arizona, or if you had done him from Leaving Las Vegas... If you did Leaving Las Vegas, people would think it was too masturbatory. If you did Raising Arizona, weirdly, I don't think people would get it. It's like,
dark.
You don't really remember the Raising Arizona character as much as you remember. Like, it's not... He was great in that movie, but he's just a Coen Brothers idiot.
He looks goofy in that movie, and he sort of stands out as just looking like a goofy fucking dude.
Because the Coen Brothers, their thing, unless, like, The Big Lebowski, I think, is an exception, but generally their thing, Burn After Reading, Hudsucker Proxy, fucking even Intolerable Cruelty, their thing is these people are idiots.
Yes.
They're just massive fucking idiots.
Yeah.
Nick Cage plays an idiot, and he does it well.
Yep.
But there's nothing specifically that defines Nick Cage, I'd say, about that role, as much as it's just that it's one of those movies where he's one of the guys, I think, kind of like, I would say another actor who kind of apes Nick Cage, not in his performances, but in their career decisions, is Jake Gyllenhaal. Right? He'll do a mainstream action film,
but he's a lot
then
more
he'll do some really weird shit.
Like,
his performances are not the same, but his choices
weird. Yeah.
He'll choose auteur films that it's just like, and then at a certain point you're like, Jesus Christ, Nick! How many fucking good movies is Jake Gyllenhaal in? And the same deal with like Nick Cage. It's like he's in so many good movies by so many good directors.
Yeah.
And
well, that's, I mean, and again, that's like what you were talking about with Jasmine.
Having not seen it,
who's younger, like the idea that like, man, Nick Cage has sort of become a trope at this point, given the last few years and like him going bankrupt and him having to do a lot of movies that are.
We're gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
A lot less than stellar, let's put it that way. But like Nick Cage is a really fucking good actor. Like he actually has really good performances. And
you have that later.
Yeah. So, the point of this, people, let's not forget that. Like he very much can rise to the occasion.
And that's.
I mean, like, dude, leaving Las
Vegas. I will say he's not a transformative actor.
No.
He doesn't hit that. I referenced Jack Nicholson earlier.
I don't think he's like Leonardo DiCaprio or
like
Marlon
he's
Brando.
way better than Leonardo DiCaprio.
Are you not a Leo fan?
Not really. No, I think Leo is one of the most overrated actors in the history of Hollywood. I think when he goes full retard, he crushes it.
I like to do like in
What's Eating Gilbert Grape? Nailed it.
Like Django Unchained, his character in that was great. I thought his performance is.
Very much disagree. We should do an episode on that one.
I'm down.
Because Django is a movie, without going too deep into it, where it's just like, dude, this movie is not good. I really don't like. I think that it's a poorly written movie, and I think it's generally. It's very hard, even if his performance is generally good. I think he's good in it. It's very hard to overcome bad writing.
See, I love that movie. I loved how much it combined blaxploitation films and spaghetti westerns. And,
I like the idea of that.
Yeah.
But it failed not only in giving you a good black protagonist. One really annoying thing was Tarantino went and did all these interviews where he shits on John Ford and calls John Ford a racist, right? But let's get one thing fucking straight here. John Ford made a movie called The Searchers, wherein you see this tense, horrific slaughter of a white family by Native Americans, and then the commitment to find the daughter who was kidnapped by John Wayne's character, who's her uncle, right? Although it's implied that he might actually be her father, because he may have cucked his brother. So he's a bad person. And as it turns out throughout the movie, as it keeps going, this guy, he's a Civil War veteran, he says racist things, he desecrates a grave as a cosmic insult to the Comanche. And slowly, as the journey continues, every single travesty that you see committed by the Native Americans early in the film is committed by John Wayne later.
Fair enough. So you have that.
You create this equivalency, but then you add this extra level. And by the way, you note that Scar, the leader of the Native American group, both of his sons were killed by white men. So both he and John Wayne are on a vengeance quest. Right. And it's canceling itself out, essentially.
Right.
And at the end, there's no spoilers with The fucking Searchers. Its last shot is one of the most famous shots in film, right? At the end, John Wayne does have one moment where he overcomes his just outrageous racism, right? Like he literally wants to kill Natalie Wood because she's laid with a Native American, because they're so against miscegenation that they just can't have it. And finally, he does kind of just say, "Let's go home, Debbie." But then everyone goes into the house, and he is left outside of the house, and the door closes on him. So this is John Ford saying, "Hey, yeah, you might have needed some of these really hard, tough motherfuckers to help settle this country, but country's settled. Don't need them anymore.
Right.
They are the past. They're gone. They're dinosaurs." Meanwhile, Tarantino's calling that guy who made a movie in the fucking 50s that critiques white racism, which is one of the most punk rock things you can do, calling that guy a racist. He made a movie where the black protagonist has zero attributes other than that he's black, doesn't like white people, loves his wife. There is not one other attribute to that character. That is one of the most racist characters I've ever seen in my fucking life.
Well, here's the thing. I don't think Tarantino's racist, and I'm very curious.
I don't think he's a racist, but I think the idea that he thinks he's somehow transcending racism or responding to it with that film is ludicrous.
I just think it's a really good revenge film, and I think I like how it plays off of.
I do have to see. I haven't seen it in a while.
I like how it plays off the Legend of Broomhilda, and how they incorporate that into the story itself. I guess my interpretation. We can get back to Nicolas Cage.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. Yeah, who cares?
But I feel like my interpretation of Jamie Foxx's character was always sort of like an exaggerated, like more colorful, eccentric playing up of that type of person from that time period, rather than.
But can you tell me anything about him other than that he loves his wife?
He loves his wife. There's a great scene. Well, let's see. He loves his wife. He's also.
I guess he's loyal. Kind of.
He's loyal.
Christoph Waltz for saving him.
I guess to really delve into this character, I should go back and watch that movie.
We should do a podcast now because I haven't seen. I saw that movie in theaters, and I literally was so This is why I asked earlier what your expectations were, because I was so disappointed by Django Unchained that may have colored my interpretation. Let's be real.
Gotcha.
Because I love Inglourious Bastards.
I did too, man.
I think that's probably Tarantino's best film.
That was one of, still to this day, one of my favorite theater-going experiences I've ever had.
The scene in the basement, Tri Glaza.
Awesome.
My heart was just boom, boom, boom,
My pops and I went to see the movie. I didn't think my dad would really like. Well, I just thought he would be like, "Oh, this is kind of ridiculous," and he fucking loved it. And he doesn't know anything about Quentin Tarantino. Like,
right? Oh, really? Okay.
Like, I mean, yeah, he did. He was not tapped into that sort of field, but he fucking loved that movie, and I thought it was just so badass. Like, and the premise of him flipping Hitler on its head, right? Like, what if we had to just fuck this dude up? I don't know. It was a badass movie. It was a badass movie.
The idea that you can use film, right, both to propagandize, pacify, and revolutionize is actually an interesting statement.
It's a great fucking movie, man.
Right? Whereas, and that one of Tarantino's flaws is usually he doesn't actually have that much of a statement to make. Like, I would say the flaw of, I think it's a great movie, don't get me wrong, but the flaw of Pulp Fiction is like, what is it really saying? I couldn't tell you.
Fair enough.
But I think that Inglourious Bastards, actually, in spite of the fact that a lot of people will critique it for, they say they don't think it says anything, I think it actually kind of is saying something. And I also think it's giving you this revenge fantasy that's intensely gratifying, while kind of winking at you and being like, yeah, we know, come on, like, yeah. But seriously, wouldn't it be cool if? And then, on top of that, to say something, I'd say the only movie of his that I thought had more actual subtext, I guess, would be Kill Bill 2 and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Those movies both have kind of interesting subtext. But otherwise, his biggest flaw is he's just constant. Like, there is no subtext. There's just text.
It's too much of it's too like pieced together from all of his influences. Typically,
it's like a remix.
He's a
remix filmmaker.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And so like with Django, it's like, dude, look, blaxploitation. Isn't it not, like, I'm not saying it's not great that we had black action heroes in the 70s.
There are some great movies,
they're called
in that
exploitation because they're exploitation films. They're not films that are really saying anything. So, like, if you don't give your black protagonist
it's an alternative
fucking character,
that's what it is.
Turned him into a... Here's the thing. So
I think it was considered like an alternative to... The same with like Blackula, like it's very like it's
right.
Like, okay, this is, but at the same, so with that in mind, I think there are certain movies that are.
But you wouldn't say Blackula is a good movie.
No. But I think so what we just talked about, like how they're setting it up, how they're phrasing it to begin with, like there are certain movies within that context, which I actually think are very good films, and then there are some that are just like, oh, okay, this is cheeky. Underground sort of DIY stuff.
Like, I like Black Dynamite because it knows that this is stupid.
Like, dude, I love the original Foxy Brown. Actually,
I really like Jackie Brown too. Tarantino movie. Like, that's a really good movie. Yeah. You know what is interesting is that Nick Cage has never been in a Tarantino movie. Isn't that kind of odd to you?
I mean, yeah, it is.
Does that not like surprise you like a little bit?
It seems like he would be the type of actor that you would...
That seems like a dream pairing, does it not? Like, Like, I like Tarantino with Pitt. I like him with Thurman. I don't know who else he's really famous for working with, but, like, I guess he works with Kurt Russell a lot. But Nick Cage seems like such a perfect fit for a Tarantino film.
He does. I mean, he very much fits the...
I wonder if they just don't like each other or something. Because that seems weird to me.
Who knows? Tarantino also is like, he's one of those dudes. We should get it back into Nick Cage, but Tarantino seems like he's such a fucking cinephile. Like, he's such a cinema nerd.
So is like this movie that Nick Cage literally is such a cinephile he drives his daughter crazy.
And I think that's probably like getting back to like his shamanistic
impulses or whatever.
Yeah, I think it's probably just like, damn, this dude just loves the art of making movies. He loves films. Just a culture junkie for everything that is cinema, right? And and you know he's manic when he's over the top, when he's super down low. Like, I think Leaving Las Vegas might be an example of his where it's like a more realistic portrayal of a real life man. Like, okay, this guy's an alcoholic and he's going to drink himself.
But he still gets to, you know, scream in a bathtub. And
yeah. It's still not without its, you know, its moments. But look, all in all, I think it was a great movie. It was
the cinephilia point is interesting because when he says, "Oh, you're a movie star, not an actor," it's like, okay, that actually, I would bet you money that line came from Nick Cage himself. And the reason I say this is because I think he really does understand the art of film and the fact that there is a difference between a movie star and an actor.
Yeah, man. I mean, like...
And once you've become a movie star, you've actually, in a sense, you've really transcended acting.
Like, well, like, look at a guy like Tom Cruise, right? Like, I feel like he's probably... God, like, honestly, this is another anecdotal example, but, like, I don't know anyone who, when they see something about Tom Cruise, isn't just like, God, that dude's fucking nuts.
That's
like,
like
that
now,
guy seems insane.
but before he jumped on that couch, I remember when people, like, really thought Tom Cruise was, like, a normal, charming guy.
Oh, for sure. But all the movies he makes now, like, they're all so over the top and larger than life, and like, yo, props to him because I think
Tom Cruise is actually kind of a good actor.
Well, no, he is.
Yeah, he is.
But I think he transcended into that realm of being a
movie
star
right.
More so than an actor. Where it's like, yo, you're not going to see Tom Cruise doing a movie like Rain Man. I think at this point in his career,
right.
He's going to be Mission Impossible guy. He's going to be Top Gun or Jack Reacher, like one.
I don't even think people would cast him in it at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't even think they would. Or hell, he wouldn't even be in something like Magnolia at this point.
Yeah, that's true. I haven't seen him attempt to be in a serious movie in at least 10 years.
Because he's so good when he's in those fucking movies, man. It's not a critique on like how good of an actor he is. It's just the choices that he makes, and I think it's the fact that like he's such a fucking global star that he's like, yo, Mission Impossible, we're fucking branded in franchise. Top Gun, even though it's just the second movie.
But he's got the Jack Reachers.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's like, he is that guy. He's going to be like, hey, I'm going to shoot a film while I'm actually flying a fucking
Yeah, they actually,
jet.
by the way, apparently flew those jets, which is outrageous.
And he knows how to fly jets, and he taught his the other co-stars of the movie how to fly a fucking jet. how to operate a camera and how to operate sound whenever they're having to, like, stop a take, readjust everything, and do a take again while these people are flying these fucking jets. It's like, dude, that's not hack level. Like, this guy, like, you are...
No, he's a
insane attention to detail, and your whole thing at this point is you are going to make things that are larger than life. Someone says, like, oh, we don't do it like this, we're not going to do a movie on this scale. Tom Cruise is the guy to be like, wait a minute, you're telling me I can't direct someone 15,000 feet up while they're flying a fucking high-speed jet? Fuck you. We're going to make this movie. He's
got this relentless commitment, almost to himself, but like he's got this relentless commitment to like, no, I'm charming. Women love me. Right?
no, he is.
And you see him, and he's just like, and you're just like, bro, like no one... I mean, I respect that you're just keeping up the appearance, but like, come on, like everyone knows.
No one thinks this is real.
Right.
In fact,
that's the difference between him and someone like Will Smith. Like, Will Smith still thinks people like him.
Yes.
Right? I think Tom Cruise is just like people love me.
Right.
You know, like,
he's
so out of reality that like, he can just stay being Tom Cruise, whereas Will Smith is so desperate for people to like him again that he hasn't made a relevant movie in 10, 15 fucking years.
Like, Tom Cruise can have that attitude and just sort of be like...
Like, he can buy himself an Oscar all he wants.
I'm Tom Cruise. What are you trying to dog me out for? I'm fucking Tom Cruise. Also, fuck you. You didn't get the memo? You don't know that everyone fucking loves me?
All the bitches love me. It's like, nah, well.
You're gonna make fun of me for kind of being a crazy person? Fuck you, I'm Tom Cruise. And
Fuck you, I was
he
in
can
Eyes
get away
Wide
with
Shut.
it because it's almost like he could just give you that look. Like he just
And
went
dude,
on,
by the way, he's in some actually great movies.
No, he is.
That's the other difference between him and a lot of movie stars of his ilk. Like like Brad Pitt's in some good movies. Brad Pitt has never been in a movie as good as Eyes Wide Shut. You know what I mean? Like, knowing which project to choose.
Do you think Inglourious Basterds is better than Eyes Wide Shut? Though? No. So you think Eyes Wide Shut?
No way.
Man, Eyes Wide Shut.
Eyes Wide Shut's a class above Inglourious Basterds for sure.
I have mixed feelings on Eyes Wide Shut. It's also a movie that I very much want to go back and watch again.
When's the last time you saw it?
Because I was, actually I saw it when I was really young, just because I was like, wait a minute, there's supposed to be a lot of naked bitches in this, so I'm gonna go check this out. And then I watched it after I discovered IFC and actually like watched good movies, and I like got into Kubrick more, so
yeah.
I understood it. And I was like, okay, well actually, let me go back and check this out again. It's not that I think it's a bad movie, but I heard a rumor that Kubrick was essentially like, look, I know that I will have made it as a director in Hollywood whenever I can essentially produce a porno and have people claim that it's a great work of art.
Oh, I know what interview you're talking about.
There's a lot of fucking in Eyes Wide Shut, and there's a lot of like, this is hilarious for me to say this, gratuitous nudity, more power to you. Don't give a shit. But there's a lot of like shots of bush and ass and tits in that where you're just like, I know for sure, like I enjoy seeing Nicole Kidman fully naked, but what's the point of this? Oh, some chick OD'd, but she's totally naked? Okay, for sure, like, I'm not opposed to this, but it just seems
I never
very
actually
like...
thought about this movie in the context of that interview. That's an interesting
point. And who knows,
point.
like, it could have been making a joke, right? But I remember seeing
as I
like,
understand that interview, he's saying someday... I don't think he said I will. I think he said someday we will hit a point as a society where a work of pornography will be considered a great work of art.
Okay, word. All right.
But so I could be wrong too, but I never thought of him trying to make that movie in connection to that. But that is interesting. I'm gonna ruminate on that actually, because I haven't fully processed it, but that's definitely a possibility that he's at the very least hinting at that. But I think what makes it a great movie isn't anything to do with that. I think it's that what Kubrick does with every single movie is he structures every movie differently. He understands structure on a level that really no one ever had before, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah.
And in that movie, fittingly for his last movie, he has what is a symmetrical structure, where every location, it's the party, let's say the party's A, the home is B, right? The fucking costume shop is C.
The
bar
the
is...
friend in the apartment.
Or the hotel bar is fucking C, actually. But so he goes from A to B to C. Let's just say for simplicity's sake that like E is the orgy scene.
Right.
So it goes A, B, C, D, E, D, C, B, A.
Right.
And that is just a really interesting way to structure a movie.
That's pretty dope, actually, thinking about it like that.
And the way that he then draws contrasts, all based around the E section, the orgy section, as the centerpiece, where it's like, okay, the most powerful men in the world are in this very fucked up, weird scenario. Mm-hmm. They're exploiting women who've been exploited since the beginning. Right? Mm-hmm. And you realize, oh, this is why Sidney Pollack's there. Like, he's one of these fucked up people. These fucked up people are everywhere.
Right.
They are people.
Right.
They are wearing masks so that they can pretend like they aren't people. Right? So that they can feel simultaneously a solidarity and a detachment from what is genuinely just an unethical thing that they do. And I bet you they don't even know why they fucking do it. And Tom Cruise doesn't exactly know why he's here. He's here because he's jealous that his wife had a fantasy. She didn't even cheat on him. she has a fucking fantasy about a fucking sailor. And just her telling him about it
sends him into a fucking...
bothers him so much that he goes on this weird sexual quest to match the fantastical sexual realm of femininity. And so I think it's actually a very interesting examination on both the enigma of femininity and the insecurity of masculinity, but also the, I guess you could say, confusion, the confused stability of identity, right? Where you are essentially unsure exactly why you're doing what you're doing, but everyone's doing it and they've always been doing it.
An attachment, to me, like, what I was going to say is like this idea of it's a detachment of reality, or a detachment to reality, where like the way you describe the party goers in the orgy scene, right? They're trying to sort of, they're wearing the masks to escape the idea of being human or whatever, or
well, you can't be identified, right?
Yeah. And then,
but you know who everyone there is. That's the irony of it.
No,
it's
sure.
like
well, it's like with Tom Cruise and his
so
wife.
you have a guilt about being here. That's really what's driving the mask.
Right. And
but that's the center of everything, and it's underneath everything. It's the underpinning of society.
Well, yeah, and I think how he mirrors that with the relationship between Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise in that movie. Like that's a very
also
like,
choosing a couple who's
that
famously a beard.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
That's a good. You think he didn't think about that?
So I mean, also I was gonna say this when we brought up Tom Cruise a few minutes ago. Have you heard the story about him fucking fishes?
No.
This could totally be a rumor for what it's worth.
Yeah, so, I've never heard
but
that.
But yeah,
it's
the thing. It's like apparently about him fucking fish, because I think it gets back to the idea of like him being a Scientologist and this idea you have total control over your body, right? Your mind and your body, and it's sort of this idea. It's like, well, okay, he wants to fuck a fish just to basically prove to himself that he still has total autonomy over his mind and body. Like basically, if I can get it up,
that's a weird way to prove it, bro.
If I can get it up and fuck a fish, then I truly am the master of my fucking domain. And it's like, yeah, that's a super weird way to prove it, and like. That could be like, Richard Gere gerbil of the ass rumor. Wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but at the same time, it is like one of those things. It's like, God damn, you seem like you're just detached and insane enough, and you are a Scientologist.
That you could try.
Maybe you would be like, you know what? If I can get my dick hard fucking this fish, I am the king of this fucking world. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's the thing about movie stardom, and part of why I find all of this relevant to the Nick Cage movie, because the Nick Cage movie is an examination
larger than life
of movies,
just like,
but also the fact that there's this technically the term would be extra textual information.
Yeah, okay.
That you and this is something that they taught once again in film school. It's actually a really early thing they'll teach you is like extra textual information is very often used by directors to make a point, right? Like if you're fucking like a good example of this that isn't so overt that you'll for sure get is like, okay, why do they use the song In Dreams in Blue Velvet?
Okay.
Because if you were alive when that song came on, that song will instantaneously connect you not only to your childhood, but to the time. Even if you weren't alive, you're aware that this is a song from the time that is supposedly the apex of American innocence, right?
There's a supreme nostalgia to that.
The unveiling of the underbelly, right? The true unveiling, right? It's not like he's not in the closet anymore watching something secretly. He's in the middle of it. He's the victim of Hopper's joyride, right? To have the underbelly that this has always been here. This is associated with this, right? You're taking the extra textual information. If you don't know who Roy Orbison is, if you don't know what the 50s in America was supposed to be, that scene simply can't have the same impact as it would have had in 1980 fucking 7 or whatever the fuck.
Correct.
which is of course the 80s were trying to be like the 50s.
Yeah.
And so and then later they sang it again. He repeats the line with the fucking stupid fucking flashlight under his face.
Yep. One of my favorite scenes in that fucking movie, dude.
I walk.
Yeah, dude.
And he just like rubs like lipstick on him or whatever. And it's like, yo, man, just so you know, when you hear these things that seem so innocent, there is always another side to it. And that point really can't be made without the extra-textual information.
Right.
So that's the best. That's one of the better examples of extra-textuality. I would say that Kubrick choosing a guy who's pretty famously kind of gay.
Right. He's potentially like, Loki, he is like...
Jack Nicholson's named Jack in the fucking Shining.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking, in this movie, you have to kind of... I will say, this movie is not going to be good if you don't know who Nick Cage is.
No, it's not.
And that's probably why they did the Hollywood ending, because for all the newcomers, how can we get them to try and find out who Nick Cage is?
Right. That's actually a good point. Like, it's almost like it entices them with the idea, like, hey, this guy isn't a total joke. Right? Despite
the bees.
An immaculately impressive run of, like, terrible movies, this guy has actually been in some really solid films, and he's given some incredible performances. You know a movie we've not talked about? Adaptation, dude.
Oh, that's right.
Like,
yeah.
dude, with
Charlie
him
fucking Kaufman.
fucking, holy shit, that's a movie up there with Leaving Las Vegas. The first time I saw that, I was just like, oh my god, dude. Like,
I forgot that he is the star of Adaptation, actually. I always think of Spike Jonze.
And this makes me look at this actor in a different light now after seeing him in this performance, you know? I don't know. How should we wrap this thing?
Would you say that... I have an idea. Would you say that for one, would you say that this film had you reconsider anything about Nick Cage, or does it validate anything for you? And then the second question would be... We'll get to the second question.
Okay.
Let's answer that.
I think it validates certain things that I felt about Nick Cage beforehand.
I think it validates him as an icon in a way.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't know if... I mean, it seems like maybe that was part of the intention.
I think so.
But I think he probably thinks he's already an icon. So in a sense, I don't know if that was what they were going for, but it does remind you at the very least.
A reminder. I think maybe that's what the point of this film was, especially with the ending. A reminder that, like, hey,
have you seen Con Air?
This guy isn't a bankrupt joke.
Right.
You know, like, who's desperate for roles to get any sort of, like, shillings he can. No, it's like, this guy is a dude who's very
He's back,
bankable.
baby.
Yeah.
Not that we ever went anywhere.
The scenes basically when young Nick Cage just screams out, Nick fucking Cage, for, like...
20 seconds or whatever, yeah.
Such an absurdly long time, you know, and it happens 2 or 3 times in the movie. And then he gets,
dude, I don't want to ruin it, but man, he gets a couple, like, you're like, all right, yeah, he's just gonna hold it out a long. He always finds some way to surprise you.
Yeah.
Always. You're just always like, man, okay, I know what he's gonna do. I know who Nick Cage is, and then he still finds some way to just be like, man, all right, I don't know. Yeah. Didn't see that one coming.
It reinforced what I thought about Nick Cage already, and it honestly just made me have a better appreciation for him in all of his glory and in a lot of the bullshit he's done. You know what I mean?
It did kind of make me, like you said, it is a reminder, but at the same time, it did kind of reinforce this idea that, like, I always, like, after seeing a lot of those movies like Wild at Heart, whatever, Matchstick Men, I appreciated Nick Cage. Whenever people would attack Nick Cage, I'd defend him like, nah, I mean, dude, you just don't get what Nick Cage is going for.
Right.
Like, it's like saying, yo, man, I don't like the Melvins. They're really sludgy. It's like, all right, I don't think you understand the Melvins.
Right.
You know, if you think that the sludge is the problem, then you are not getting what they're going for. Right. If you think that Nick Cage being a bad actor is a problem, you don't get Nick Cage. Right? Like,
yeah.
But at the same time, I also thought it was a really... Frankly, it's a big risk to take as a movie. Like, he knows... I think he knows
for the fences,
what other fucking actor alive today could make a movie about themselves in this fashion. Brad Pitt couldn't do it.
I was gonna say, man.
Clooney couldn't do it. Adam Driver can't do it. I don't know. I'm trying to think.
Maybe Leo could. Maybe that's a big.
I mean, I kind of like if he would. I would like to see that.
Yeah,
like Leo's issue is he doesn't. For me, is that he doesn't have a persona. But he's not. I mean, but he's also not a good enough actor to be a chameleon. So he's kind of stuck in this in between where he's a great leading man in a movie like Inception, where you just need a decent movie star, right? But he's not Daniel Day-Lewis.
No,
he's not Nick Cage, right? He's kind of stuck in between the two. So I don't know. Like, I would love to see him do it because maybe that would actually establish a persona for him.
Right.
But Nick Cage could only do this because he had the persona.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you've not seen this movie yet, you should go out.
Ben said Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis, maybe.
Actually,
could do it.
That's a good call. I think that's like
because he's done some weird stuff.
I think that's maybe like one of the better comparisons to Nick Cage because I certainly can't think of anyone off the top of my head who I would be like Johnny Depp.
Yeah, Johnny Depp. You're right.
Okay, that's that.
But even then, once again, what is his persona? He's a chameleon. He's just a weird chameleon.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Like you don't really know who Johnny Depp is.
No, and it's God, dude. There's just a certain level of eccentricity for Nick Cage that just like it covers and it spans so many bases, whether it's like lowbrow, highbrow, good, bad, regardless of like, you know, sort of what area it inhabits. Like it's entertaining, even in a fucking terrible way. Like he's over the top. He's fucking zany. He's overly committed to parts that he probably shouldn't be overly committed to.
I think
but like, goddamn, like I respect it, dude, and like
he's genuinely a. And this is I mentioned earlier. Our friend asked, "How can you make a movie about this?" Like this guy is a unique figure.
Yeah, he's a
I
character,
really cannot think of anyone. And this was my final question. Actually,
okay.
Can you think of anyone who has a persona that even comes close to the way we think of Nicolas Cage? Because at this point, I think it's safe to say, just objectively, Nick Cage is not an idiot. He knows what he's doing. Right. Can you think of anyone similar, dead or alive, working or not, and also in the sort of gonzo actor vein more broadly? So someone maybe not quite as similar, but like you wouldn't say like that they're in the same vein, but like someone like Jack Nicholson, where it's like okay, but they are like crazy. Who do you think is better than Nick Cage, if anyone? Do you think he's one of the best, or do you think it's just that he's so different that he's uncategorizable?
I think it's.
Can you even rank this guy?
Okay, so I think it's almost more like he's uncategorizable because, like, look, I don't think he's on the level right off the bat of like a Daniel Day-Lewis, right? I don't think it's that same sort of.
Holy shit, that's Lincoln.
Yes, yeah. Or like fucking Bill the Butcher. I know you're not a fan of There Will Be
Blood.
I love
Bill the Butcher. Bill the Butcher's Gangs of New York.
Yeah, no, but I was gonna say Daniel Plainview from.
Daniel Plainview is just Bill the Butcher chewing sunflower seeds.
I fucking love it, dude. So no, I think he's uncategorizable for comparison's sake. I think like I said a few seconds ago, I think Johnny Depp. I don't even think he's on the same level, but I think he's
who's not on the same level.
A similar characteristic.
Cage isn't on his level, or Depp isn't.
No, Depp isn't exactly on Cage's level in terms of like being a character, right?
Yeah, being a unique. Yeah.
Jack Nicholson, great call on that. Like I think that's someone who's sort of in that.
But Nicholson can do about Schmidt, right?
Right.
And that's what I would say. Arguably, Nicholson's probably the greatest movie star of all time. He's Jack. He is the Jack.
Dude, I watched
But then you see him in About Schmidt, and he's Schmidt. he's not the Jack at all in that movie. So like he's like, yeah, fuck you. I don't have to be who I am. I'm just so awesome that you'd rather see me be that most of the time.
Dude, I mean, him in As Good as It Gets.
I love
that
that
character,
movie,
and that's a great movie. I just watched The Bucket List the other day, actually, with Morgan Freeman, and even like, just Jack Nicholson's performance at that. It's just one of those things. I'm just like, God damn, dude, this dude is fucking cool. Like this guy's just like.
He's just like the coolest guy ever.
These little fucking mannerisms, like it's so ridiculous. There's a couple things where it's like, wait, why the fuck did he do that? Jack Nicholson, that's why he did that. Because he just, and so I think that's a good comparison on your part to a guy like Nick Cage. But I think it's hard to categorize him because I don't think he's like, oh, this is an incredible actor in the classical sense.
No, but
like a Daniel Day-Lewis, where it's just like,
no, drawing from people like Brando.
Absolutely,
in the unpredictability. Yep. He just doesn't, like you're saying, he doesn't have the chameleon.
No,
but I think he knows he's not a chameleon.
Right,
and so he's just like, fuck it, I'll just be so hard to predict that it doesn't actually matter.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I don't think he's a dumb guy like you said earlier. I think he knows exactly what he's leaning in and like what the story is, who he is.
Maybe he's kind of like the Jack White of acting in that like Jack White has one of his fingers just doesn't work for one. He has to bar his chords, I think, with his middle finger. I don't think that's why he slides with his pointer. It's because I think his one of his fingers, he has like a Tony Iommi sort of thing where he can only use 3 fingers when he's playing on the neck. And so he's hamstrung. He's hampered.
Right.
Considering that he'll never be able to be Hendrix or Zappa or fucking Van Halen, how can I find a way to be so unique and distinctive that shit doesn't even fucking matter? You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that, yeah, I actually was initially setting up something where I would disagree, where I would be like, no, he is categorizable. He is rankable. But the more I think about it, especially with what you're saying, like you can rank Nicholson, you can rank Depp. I think Johnny Depp is just like a fucking amazing actor.
Yeah.
Right? Like he's so fucking good in
when
everything.
He's in the pocket,
even in a bad movie, he's good.
Right.
And like, whereas Nick Cage, it's not even that he's so bad he's good. He's just Nick Cage.
See, it's like it's like one of those things, and getting back to the movie star aspect, right? Younger Nick Cage is like, bro, you just can't take your eyes off of him sometimes. Even if it's a fucking train wreck, right? It's like the idea like a glorious train wreck. Like, again, the dude's just committed. He's going 120%, and you know that, even if it is in a...
Christopher Walken. There you go. That's someone who he's similar to, actually.
Oh, I got another one. What about John Malkovich? They actually, I mean, like...
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, Malkovich is like a good actor, technically speaking.
Yes, yeah. Like in a classical sense.
Jacques Hughes, I get
for
it.
Sure.
But like...
he's got that persona, though. There's dude, like an...
Yeah, he's just... The way he talks is so unnerving.
Yes, yeah.
And you're just like, what the... Who is this fucking guy?
He's incredible in Burn After Reading. Loved him. Loved him in Burn After Reading.
So here's the question then.
All right.
He's maybe not one of the greatest actors of all time because he's not a chameleon. Is Nick Cage one of the greatest movie stars of all time? And what does that mean? Does it mean he's in your top 10? Is he in your top 20?
This is what I'll say. I think he is certainly worthy of a chapter in a book.
Yeah.
About movie stars. Yeah. Regardless of where he's ranked, he definitely deserves his own chapter.
Yeah.
Where it's just like, hey, there's some really good, and whoa, is there some like dog shit.
Yeah, right.
And again, he's committed in both senses, but like...
I don't know, the cops are here or something, I don't know. Sweet.
Oh. You got the megaphone on.
Well, anyway. Point being, I think if you had to like look at, if I had to write that book, I'd absolutely give him his own chapter. And I do think that he he's just complete. Because even like Walken, dude, Walken isn't actually in that many good movies. Like, some of my favorite Christopher Walken moments are usually from terrible movies, like The Country Bears or something.
Okay.
I'll get you, Bears.
Yeah. I mean, like, dude, his character in Joe Dirt's fucking hilarious,
Yeah, just
dude.
trash.
Yeah.
Like, his thing is almost like, I was in The Deer Hunter, I can make trash the rest of my life.
The Dead Zone. That's a good one with him in it.
Oh, yeah, the fucking Cronenberg movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
actually, it's Cronenberg with Stephen King book. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Fucking, I think this movie, to repeat what you said, but let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
It really did make me realize, and I guess that's the point of the movie, so it achieved its goal. Nick Cage is absolutely one of the greatest movie stars ever.
He's a movie star.
Right, he really is. This movie made me wish that there were more Nick Cage movies to watch.
Yes.
Really, like I was like,
there's a lot of them already.
I went and looked at his filmography. I'm like, seen it.
Right.
I was like, damn it, I've seen all the fucking good ones. You know what I mean? I've fucking seen. Like I haven't seen Moonstruck. Apparently, that's a good movie.
Oh, I'm not actually seen that either.
But like, other than that, I've seen all the good Nick Cage movies.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it does revive his career. Hopefully it does create more of a market for some more Nick Cage. Because frankly, I heard that movie Pig was good. Actually, I haven't seen that one.
Yo, I have not seen that either, but all the reviews I've heard from that are pretty fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Also, should be a pretty good revenge film.
Yeah, and
That
apparently it
seems
makes
to
you
be
give
what
a
it
shit
is.
about a pig. So
Yeah.
it's like John Wick with a pig.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll do that one. Anyway, I think it was a good first.
I think so.
I think it was a first first. Jesus Christ! What is up with the fucking alarms?
It's just it's not an alarm. It just doesn't work right.
A good
beautiful.
introductory podcast to the Bent Cinema.
Yeah, I think the next one we got to do is either got to be The Northman or Texas Chainsaw.
Oh, I'm down.
But I would love to fucking do whatever it was we were talking about earlier.
We had a few. We'll get a list together, and
Fucking,
we'll probably end up like watching
Eyes Wide
them.
Shut.
Yeah.
Boy, I'd love to do Eyes Wide Shut. That's a good one.
Do we establish a rating before we leave?
Yeah, what's your out of 5 stars? You can do half stars, I think, but 5 stars is I think the rating because I like it more than out of 10 because when you get to the 5-star rating, it's like that is greatness. That's The Godfather. When you're at 4 stars, that's great. When you're at 3 stars, it's good. When you're at 2, it's passable. When you're at 1 or 0, it's bad.
I think 3.5. That's what I'll go for. And I'll give it a 3.5, but closer to 4 though.
I would give it a solid. Yeah, I'd actually give it a 3.5 as well. I'd have to see it again. Like I think it could maybe earn the 4th.
3 overall. That's how it is.
Thank you. That's Ben Forgan.
Negotiation.
I honestly think like first viewing I'd have to say 3.5 with a potential for it to graduate to 4.
Absolutely. I think
I'd have to give it a second viewing.
I think it's very close, very, very close to the 4. Like it could, like you said, watch it again. It definitely could get to 4 territory.
The risk of watching again is that it drops to a 3, of course, because you already have seen it, and then that's when you really can see what works and what doesn't work. But
right.
The fact that I'm as keen to see it a second time as I am, frankly, actually, is good news because going into it, I wasn't sure.
Yeah, no expectations. Wasn't sure of what to expect. Like I said, thought it would be like a good, bad movie. 100% was not that. It was a good movie. I think like great structure all the way around, great performances. People should go watch it. Whether you know Nicolas Cage or you're not that familiar with Nicolas Cage, you should go watch it anyway.
If you don't know Nicolas Cage,
go watch
Wild
movies.
at Fucking Heart.
Yes, which is apparently tried to rent that after watching Unbearable Weight. It is not on Amazon Prime. It's not on Netflix. It's not on Hulu. It's not even on the store from my...
I think it's an NC-17 movie. That might be part of why.
It's nowhere. I couldn't even rent it. Not even like the app store from my TV, dude.
I have a copy if you want it.
We should watch that.
Anyway, thank you for listening to us for however the fuck long. Apparently it's been a while. But honestly, I love talking about movies. I love talking about movies with this guy.
Yeah, be many
and,
more.
We'll be dialing it in over the next few. And we appreciate anyone who sat through this shit. So have a good night, guys.
Peace.